when I was 19 years old, I visited Nicaragua during the U.S.-backed Contra War against that country. When I went there in 1987, this was in some of the worst days of the Contra War. The people there in Nicaragua were very much worn down by this war, by the economic embargo against Nicaragua that the U.S. was imposing. These were pretty dark times for the Nicaraguans. The U.S. war on Korea, the U.S. war on Vietnam. That alternative goal was achieved in both countries, right? Through military means. That is to say, they could not defeat the Viet Minh in Vietnam. And at a certain point, they knew that. So the goal was to simply destroy the country and leave the Viet Minh and the liberation forces with a pile of rubble to manage. Same thing with Korea in North Korea. Is, again, if we can't overthrow you, we will destroy you. And that's what the U.S. has done time and again. Again, the sanctions do the very same thing. In terms of the damage they do deliver similar results. I mean, they do deliver death. They do deliver destruction of infrastructure in the same way that bombs and bullets do, right? There's a very good one by the Center for Economic Policy Research, which found that in 1 year alone, between 2017 and 2018, 40,000 Venezuelans, they estimated, were killed due to U.S. sanctions by virtue of the medicines, in particular, life-saving medicines that have been denied Venezuela through sanctions. That's in 1 year alone. While the sanctions prevent Venezuela from maintaining its oil industry and maintaining its power grids. And so, again, it's just as if you had bombed those things. You're just denying the people the economic benefits of their industries, and also, again, you're denying them electricity, other infrastructure, again, in much the same way that you could or would through actual military means. And so in that sense, sanctions is war by another means. The UN Charter does not contemplate unilateral sanctions, does not allow it. That human rights is now being used as a cudgel, as a pretext for the West, and in particular the U.S., to dominate the globe. After the Soviet Union collapsed, the U.S. had to come up with another pretext for war, and so human rights and humanitarianism became that pretext. But largely it is just that, a pretext. The U.S. is not advancing human rights through its military interventions. It's not advancing humanitarianism. In fact, it's undermining it. I was going to cite Eisenhower's warning as he was leaving office about this military-industrial complex. And what is that? It is this marriage between the U.S. military and government on the one hand and private war industry on the other, right? What we saw in Afghanistan was a 20-year war where the U.S. went in, overthrew the Taliban, and left, and the Taliban is now back in power. From a strategic point of view, it has to be seen as a complete failure. And yet it went on for 20 years. Why did it go on for 20 years? Because the defense industry, companies that make the bombs, that make the planes, that make the vehicles, and also the private military contractors that now are fighting the wars in lieu of, public military personnel. They made trillions of dollars as long as the war continued. So they didn't care if the war was ever won. The goal was for the war to simply continue forever. The U.S. has no functioning democracy. It has a rule by the oligarchs, the rich oligarchs, again, many of whom are in the defense industry. And so they continue to push these wars.